Welcome to Second 50 into a conversation with Gwendolyn Bounds, who's the author of a new book, Not Too Late, The Power of Pushing Limits at Any Age. Wendy's an award-winning journalist, and she's here to join us today. Welcome, Wendy, to Second 50 to this conversation. I'm really pleased that you agreed to come and talk with us.
Yeah, George, it's great to be here. And we already got over the first obstacle, which is my name, right? On the book, it's Gwendolyn Bounds, but people and my friends call me Wendy, which you did, which is great. So thank you.
I hope that's okay. I figured that in our emails back and forth, you had signed Wendy, so I thought I would go ahead and do that. So I just want to read quickly a few sentences from a review on this book that I did, which is linked to this conversation. Just by way of quick introduction, Not Too Late provides a nuanced and very personal look into how an average non-athletic journalist in her late 40s grappled with the emotional and physical crossroads of middle age and found redemption in the grueling sport of obstacle course racing. It's the story of how a skinny stick of a girl became a badass competitive athlete in the second half of life. And I can say that because Wendy says that herself in the book. So I'm not being offensive by saying that.
I don't know if I said I was a badass. I did say I was a skinny stick of a thing.
Well, but it becomes pretty clear that you are a badass to anyone reading the book. And so we're going to talk about obstacle course racing, but we're going to talk about a lot more than that because the book is about a lot more than just a grueling physical activity. But first, Wendy, I do think it would be helpful if you could, there are two things that I think would be helpful to kind of set this up for listeners. The first is, can you just give us a quick introduction to what is obstacle course racing, and particularly Spartan races?
100%. I mean, look, I had no idea what this sport was when I first encountered it during a random Google search on a morning after a dinner party left me very unsettled. We can maybe talk about that later. But essentially, it is combining cross-country running in various distances, 5K, 10K, 21K, even a 50K, through mountainous terrain or farmland, different places all over the country and the world. But in the midst of that running, you also have obstacles. So these would be equivalent to military style obstacles, such as crawling under barbed wire or scaling a 6 or 8 foot wall, climbing a 17-foot rope, carrying a heavy bucket of rocks up and down the mountain, things of that nature. But also some things that we would remember from our bodies of our youth, like being on monkey bars or swinging across rings. And I should note that, just for the point of your audience, while these things, and they sounded terrifying to me in the beginning and like something I would absolutely never do, but 52 races later, I will say that I actually think the sport is one of the best designed activities to help us be fit for life and all it throws at us as we get older through respiratory fitness, muscle mass, and mobility, right? Mobility, being able to play with kids and grandkids. So that's the sport in a nutshell. And Spartan racing is the biggest worldwide operator of obstacle course racing.
And there's another also, is it Tough Mudder, I think, is another variation of it?
It's another brand. Spartan actually owns Tough Mudder as well. Okay. There are many other local races and regional races that go on around the country under different names. So people will probably hear about those in their communities. But by far, the largest internationally and nationally is the Spartan race brand. And people also know Tough Mudder pretty well, as you said.
Okay. All right, great. So you mentioned it earlier, but you're at this point of reckoning in your life. You went to a dinner party, you overheard a conversation between an older gentleman and a young girl, and it really got you thinking. And you came home and you ended up, as you say, the next day, sort of absentmindedly Googling. And could you just tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that transition is really interesting.
We don't often see the moments of our pivots or our transitions coming, right? They may be building, and then the moment happens. And in my case, I think I was feeling a sentiment maybe similar to a lot of people have felt, and you yourself may have felt, which is just being trapped in what I kind of thought of as a cycle of sameness, the same things, the same routines, same work issues, same restaurants, same friends, just same habits, right? And it's not that they were bad things, and I wasn't unhappy, but you begin to wonder, well, is this kind of it? Is this the last thing I'm going to be? And I think I was at that point when I was at this dinner party and I heard this older man, well into drinking his gin, ask this young girl, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that was a pivotal question that it stuck in my brain almost like a hanging chad for the rest of the night. And I think I just realized nobody was ever going to ask me that again. Okay, that is fair.
Mm.
I was almost 45 at the time. But the truth was, I wasn't even asking myself. And that's the really
Right.
important thing, I think, for all of us and your audience. And that's what led to this Google search the next morning, which was, as you said, kind of random. I Googled, what are the hardest things you can do? And the algorithm spit back, what are the hardest physical things you can do? And Spartan racing was one of them. And I just went down this rabbit hole reading about it and thinking, I could never do anything like that. I mean, I was the last picked kid for sports teams. I barely made it to the gym enough to justify my membership. But yet here was this, what looked like a very grueling pastime, and something like clicked in my brain.
Yeah.
And that's how this journey begins.
So, but what I'm interested in is you could have Googled or you could have picked up on what is the hardest instrument to learn? What is the hardest language to learn? And that would have been more in keeping, it would seem, with your more academic background and your journalism, Wall Street Journal. But for some reason, there was something, and I think that, and you allude to this a little in the book, but you were clearly, even if you didn't know it yet at that early time, you were hearkening back to something left undone in your youth that you perhaps subconsciously wanted to reckon with.
I think this is where we all will find intrinsic, like deep rooted motivation to pursue something, is probably looking back at something that was, as you put it, left on the table when
Hmm.
we're younger. Something we wanted to be, or I once heard that if you can find the thing you were made fun of as a kid and you get really good at it, it will become your superpower.
Yeah.
Uh, and then that is really like the physical side of who I was not to be, too tongue in cheek about it, but it was very underdeveloped, so to speak, right? And yet I gravitated toward the things that people praised me for, like most of us did. Right? People were like, "You are such a nice writer. Look at
Right.
that nice short story you wrote. Oh, I'll pursue writing." Like no one was complimenting like the way that I moved about on the soccer field, right? Or anything of that nature. So I didn't gravitate toward that. But I think that led to but I always had a hunger to be part of competitive sports. I was born 1 year before Title IX was passed in
Hmm.
the United States, which gave women equal footing in sports. I think I always instinctively knew that was missing. And I think I'm very lucky that the algorithm helped me land on this because it helped me fill, I think, a hole that had been there since I was very young, as you've noted.
Yeah. And it gestated for a while. You didn't immediately sign up for a Spartan race, and we'll talk about that. But it planted the seed, if you will, and got you started to thinking about what else might be out there.
It did. I mean, I think we tend to think like often we see things in movie terms, right? I go see Spartan racing, I hit Google, and then the next
Right.
day I'm up with Rocky music and going at it. But the truth is, life is gets in the way. If you have a job, I had a big job, I had,
Hmm.
responsibilities to my family. I mean, it was, all the little things, a house to attend to, all the middle-age responsibilities that we all have. And so it was, as you noted, it was a little over a year and a half before I ever even got to my first race. And I sometimes think back on that period and of all the little things that actually got me to the starting line and how important they were for not giving up in that time period. Because had I done that, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Right. At each of those critical moments, you chose to go forward instead of stopping or stepping off.
Yes, and I know you know this from your own athletic
Yeah.
journey, as you have relayed to me, and finding a trainer and sticking with that trainer day after day and making
Right.
decisions about what you drink and don't drink and what you eat and don't eat. I mean,
Right.
everything turns on the little decisions, not necessarily the big ones.
Absolutely right. And so one of the things I think you did a great job of in the book is that you explained to us what Spartan racing is, but you didn't overwhelm us with detail. It wasn't too granular. But I would like to get just a little bit granular because one of the reasons I started Second 50, and one of the things I hear so much from people who are over 50 as they're in midlife, is this. These are people who've spent 20 years building a family, building a career, and they really, it used to be that they could on the weekend go to the basketball court and play pickup basketball and kind of decide to go for a run, and everything kind of fell back in place. And they can't do that anymore. And they find themselves untethered because they're not sure how to get started. And I think that the fear is that they're either going to get hurt or that they're sore, they're uncomfortable. So I wonder, how did you navigate that, and how did you avoid injury in particular? I think that's kind of the number one thing. If there's sort of the 10 commandments of getting back into shape, I would say the first one is avoid injury at all costs. But you had a really interesting move back into athleticism, and can you tell us a little bit about what that was, a little more in a little more granular way?
Sure. I mean, I think the first thing was just not overloading myself with worry about being perfect or getting it right or knowing everything. Once you hit our age, you tend to think you have your, finger on the master control switch, and you're used to, I don't know if being dignified is the word, but you're used to, being somewhat competent.
Right.
And I think of that, that's kind of a trap. And so getting out of that trap meant setting my alarm for 45 minutes earlier in the morning before I had to drive to, my job being the chief content officer at Consumer Reports. And basically, I'd signed up for free workouts of the day that would come into my email box from Spartan. I didn't know what any of the moves were. I'd get on YouTube and I'd
They
go
were
out in my
online.
yard. Yeah, I'd go
Online,
out
but yeah.
online. Yeah. And I would Google what is a bear crawl, and I'd watch somebody do it. And then
Right.
I'd perform it in my own backyard. Was that systematic? And was I working with fancy coaches at that point? No. But I was doing something, right? I
Mhm.
was doing something, and over time, like that began to be as much a part of my routine as getting up, eating breakfast, going to work. And I'd be in a meeting, as you have probably been in so many times in your life, in a conference room, and you're on slide 85 of a PowerPoint presentation and
Right.
your eyes are glazing over. But I'd feel under the table these little baby calluses, right? That would be emerging on my hands. And it was like this secret identity that was
Yeah.
growing. And so just doing something and not being afraid to look foolish crawling out in my yard while my neighbors drove by, like that was the first big breakthrough. And eventually, as the book goes on, people will learn on the journey what happens to me, what triggers after a race that I fail out of, right?
Right.
I get close to hypothermia, I'm ill prepared, and I've reached the limit probably of what I can do on my own, that I start to seek professional coaching. And that was its own turning point, right? The
Mhm.
process went from here to a different level. And that was one of the ways that I have managed to avoid serious injury, knock on wood, for so long, was because I was really dialed in. And I think this is important for anybody doing anything physical, on the small stuff, the small, boring stuff. I used to was at the Wall Street Journal as a writer and editor for, almost 2 decades. And we had these types of stories we wrote that we called DBIs, dull but important. And I think about them in exercise as well. So mobility, you're a mobility expert yourself now. And so you know this, right? Strengthening the little muscles in your hips and your
Right.
glutes and your ankles and your feet. All of those things are critical if I'm going to, for anybody, right? Just walking down the street and stepping off a curve, but particularly if you're going to be careening up and down rocky
Yes.
mountains, with people chasing you. So just really paying attention to the
Mhm.
little details versus, oh, I need to learn to do pull-ups and
Right.
push-ups. Like that mattered too, but probably not as much as the small stuff.
Right. And my belief is that mobility really is the place to start, mobility and movement, because if you don't have a good structural integrity, you will get hurt when you try to do the push-ups or the pull-ups or the anything else. But I couldn't agree more. And a lot of it is not sexy or exciting in the moment. It's I think you mentioned in the book that when you first started working with some of the experts and they had you doing some of these things, you said, "Wait a minute, I'm
Yeah.
trying to run around the track here. I don't need to be, mobilizing my foot and ankle." And yet it certainly came in handy for you.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something. The only time I've ever had any real injury that has kind of kept me from racing was when I slacked off. There was this little nubby ball that I roll my foot on to keep the tissue loose. And when I slacked off and didn't use that, I got plantar fasciitis and a
Yeah.
small tear. And so I don't even leave home. I never go on a trip. That ball is with me all the time now. So yeah.
And do you have So the scheduling, I know, became an issue. When you got serious, you had to really double down on scheduling because so many people, myself included, are constantly finding the exercise moving to the end of the day and then frankly getting moved to the next day and the next day. And do you have any secrets for that? Anything that you have found valuable in terms of doing that scheduling and getting into the routine?
I do. And this is cultivated over, a matter of years. But I think the first thing was really deciding what were the priorities and the essential things that I was going to focus on in my life. And we tend to think everything is essential and important and that nothing can go. And that was a very first step. And I decided it was obviously my family. It
Mhm.
was my job, and it was training, obstacle work course
Mhm.
training. And everything else could take, at least for a while, a back seat or be stopped. And so that meant stepping back from some of the work I did, serving on boards, right, as on boards of advisors. It meant saying no to a lot of social invitations. There were just a lot. It meant saying no to myself about the scrolling on social media or just flopping down at the end of a day when I'm really tired and turning on Netflix. Like there was a lot of that. If it didn't roll up into one of those three things, I had to put it aside. So that was one. Two is becoming far more efficient in my job.
Mhm.
And you realize like how much time you spend in meetings where 15 minutes of it may be just wasted on chit chat and
Right.
things of that nature. I got really ruthless about, and that's in the book too, kind of the nitty gritty of what I did about my meeting schedule. And so that was another thing. And it was also then just bucketing my time during the day. And this piece of time is reserved for this, and this is for this, and keeping my head in the game when I'm in that piece.
Mhm.
Because if you're going back and forth between a million things, you're going to get none of them done. And so I'm still working to even make that even better because I do think that's the secret. But those are some of the things I was pretty, as I said, ruthless about, and still am, still am.
But at the core of your transition, it seems to me, was mindset, was a feeling that you could in some way accomplish what you wanted to do. And not necessarily that you could accomplish the level of success you have ultimately have with Spartan racing, but that you could look at the YouTube video and say, I will try the bear crawl, that you could get up 45 minutes earlier and do something. Some of those themes repeat all the time through your story. Mindset, keep moving both literally on the race in the race day, but also just to keep moving emotionally and spiritually. And you had to contend with a lot of that also. It's one of the things that I find is particularly challenging for people now is this thought that now that I'm 45, 55, 65, it's too late. I missed my chance. And I wonder if you could just speak a little bit about that in terms of mindset and how you were able to keep the energy even when you weren't sure you were going to be able to dig deep enough to find it.
Yeah. So, two things specifically. I think the first thing is I really loved, after my first race, I loved it. I mean, I
Mm.
didn't do well. I fell off a rope into a crumpled heap. Like I had tears in my eyes. I almost like walked out into the parking lot, but I stuck it out. And when I crossed that finish line, I intuitively something just snapped, right? Like I knew I wanted to race again and that I wanted to get better and that for the first time in so long being on that course, all of the weight of the world and the little things
Hmm.
that eat at you every day had not been there. All I had focused on was moving ahead, one foot in front of the other. Can I carry this? Can I do this? And that was a gift. I mean, we are just bombarded and our brains are on overload with our screens and
Right,
everything, and I wish you and I were sitting in the same room together
right,
right now.
right.
This is the world we live in. But when I'm on that course, none of that's there. It's gone. There's no phone. There's nothing. There's just focus. And so I craved that. I wanted that again. It was almost like I haven't taken drugs, but I think it's like a drug. That's what it
Yeah,
would feel like. And so that loving something enough is number one, because if you don't feel that, then you're just pursuing something too aimlessly, like because other people are, you think
right.
you're not going to put in the work. So I was just driven by the fact that I loved it. That was number one. But number two, and you're hitting on something very important, the very well-known psychologist and author named Carol Dweck, she's out of Stanford University. She talks a lot about this notion of a growth mindset over a fixed
Yeah,
mindset. A fixed mindset being, I have to be born with these certain skills to be able to do well. And a growth mindset being, no, you know what? If I put in hard work, I can learn them. And I certainly don't think I was born with any particular gifts on the athletic front, but I did believe they could be developed. And thinking that that was possible and allowing myself to insert the word yet at the end of my thinking,
hmm,
i.e., I'm not an athlete yet.
yeah.
That was a good lever. And so I really credit that with one of the reasons that I kept going and being able to weather. And I think as you get older, you get more patient. You've been in situations where things go well, where they don't go well, where they sort of plod along, and you know how to be patient during those. And I had that patience where I don't know, George, if I had been in my 20s or early 30s, if I would have had the same patience with the process to put in the 8 years it's taken me to get to this point where, 52 races in. And I mean, and this is the words that are going to leave my mouth still seem kind of unfathomable to me. But, right now I'm the ranked number one in my age group for the US National Series in Spartan racing. That is, I can't even tell you how not even in the realm of thinking that was. It was like me flying to Mars and flapping my arms as wings. So, but it was all that, one, loving it, and two, being patient when things would go wrong, figuring out why, learning, getting back on the plateau, being okay when they were just kind of going
Hmm.
along, and then being ready for the next rise that would come.
And do you think that you would have maintained that level of passion if you were not progressing through the ranks, if you were not improving your standing with the races? Do you think you loved that difference between the cerebral and the physical enough that it in and of itself was enough of a bomb?
What a great question. I mean, really great question. And I'm just going to answer what my gut is saying right now because I haven't thought about it too much. But my gut is saying that I still would be racing because the gift of what it has given me has been this physical fitness and this ability to do things in my body that I never could before. And that
Right.
feels great. And also, there are no guarantees for any of us. I mean, anything can happen to you with a medical diagnosis, but on the things I can control and can be measured in terms of my muscle mass through certain scans and my blood work and things of that nature, like I'm doing what I can do
Right.
to live a better health span. But the other thing I want to say, because again, I haven't been asked that before, there's actually, as great as it sounds to say, oh, I'm on the podium, and it does feel good to say it. I mean, I worked really hard to get to this point, but it puts a different level of pressure on the
Oh,
sport.
yeah.
I line up now and I think for the competitive races, and it's like, well, if I don't hit the podium, you feel a little bit downcast, right?
Right.
Because you've been
Right.
doing it, as opposed to the days when I just was at the back of the pack and I had
Yeah.
nothing to lose and it was great. And so one of my favorite things that I love doing even after competitive racing is to go back out and run what they call an open course, which is a non-competitive heat, which I used to run in the beginning with people where it's their first time or they're running in teams and there's not that it's just a little bit, it's a little more less, there's not as much
Right.
pressure. And I
Right.
still really love that. So I think the answer to your question is yes. And in some ways, the competitive side, well, it's been amazing. Again, like I said, it changed the dynamic of it.
Well, and you do see, regardless of how you may end up on the race course, you definitely see the changes, as you said, in your blood work and in your general physical fitness, which is in and of itself enough. I mean, I think that's important. And if you think about people who um, love music, I like to play the guitar. I'm not very good at it, but I still enjoy it. And from a purely cognitive perspective, anytime we're working to learn a language or music or something, it doesn't really matter how good we get at it. What matters is that we're exercising our minds to learn it and to learn new things, which actually brings me to, I think, an important point. And you make this point in the book, and that is that you're not suggesting at all that people should go out and do grueling physical activities in order to find passion and to uh, have goals later in life. You're saying that, as you said a moment ago, you need to enjoy what you're doing. It needs to turn you on, and it needs to give you some outlet different from your daily life and provide you with this sense that you're continuing to grow and evolve. And if it brings in other people and you join a community, all the better. But the book is not about this is the one way to beat back the demons, Father Time. It's about finding something that does engage you.
I think this won't be the thing for most people, right?
No, that's
Yeah,
right.
it may be for some, but the essence is, you know, I was waking up feeling like there was something still untapped in my
Yeah.
tank. I was unsettled, right? And I think it was because I hadn't healed this little girl version of me that felt kind of weak and used to get pushed up against the lockers and, all the things that come with being a kid and growing up and,
Yeah.
you don't feel confident in your own physical self. So this was my thing, but it's not going to be everybody's thing. Everybody's going to have something else that fills whatever that either the hole or it taps into them and makes them feel alive again. It's like
Right.
this spark that goes off in you. And the truth, and I really believe that midlife is this incredible time to do this because we have this wealth of crystallized intelligence, our wisdom that we can draw upon. And we again have this patience. And we have been through so many things that we understand how that when something goes awry, that we can probably pull ourselves out of it. It's just what a wonderful spot to be in. I didn't have all those tools when I was younger. And yet I'm able to take the attributes I was born with. Attributes, as you know, are very different than skills. Attributes are things like humor or grit or
Right.
perseverance and I'm able to do something new that gives me kind of something to be excited about when I go to sleep and excited about when I wake up. And as you wisely noted, the ability to be disciplined about my time. And my time now leads to something that matters to me. And my time is also hopefully leading to something that will be good for me in the future. And to what you said about whether it's fly fishing, or
Yeah.
learning to play pickleball or singing or or sailing, whatever it might be that is the thing you do, that constant journey of learning, unlearning, relearning, that's the thing that's going to get you out of that cycle of sameness I mentioned in the very beginning. And this is the perfect time to do it.
Yes, and because one tends to have more resources. I mean, less time perhaps from a professional perspective, but um, more maturity in terms of looking at the overall arc of life, and also some realistic pressure that there's less time ahead than there may have been behind. So if you're going to do it, you need to do it. I mean, the nice thing about Not Too Late is that it's really a template that can be applied to anyone's passion or interest. And I think if you don't have a passion or interest because you've spent your time building your life around career, then that's a wake-up call because career won't be there forever. And from my perspective, as I said in the book review I did, I think that physical fitness is a prerequisite for healthy aging. So it doesn't have to be a Spartan race, but it does need to be a basic functional fitness that allows one to play with grandkids, to put your suitcase up above in the airline or the train. So there is the importance of that. And I think that the degradation happens kind of between sort of 45 and 65 in a way that we don't really appreciate until it becomes more difficult to get it back. So I think it's never too late, but it's better to do it earlier than later, certainly.
I think that's a great point. And I would say going through something of this nature, and you're right, I wrote this to be a guidebook and to help people do it better than I did, right? I actually went back for this book. It's not just my experience. As you know, I interviewed a lot of very smart people in their fields, to whether it's time management or motivation or leadership or military leaders or aging experts, to kind of put together guideposts and tools that people could use for whatever they might need to embark on their own journey. So that is there. But I also think, you mentioned work, and at this time where I'm still working, I still have a full-time job, and embracing something new like this, and what I have learned by doing it has made me more efficient. It's made me more tolerant for risk in my job. I went to work at a startup, an internet startup out of Tokyo, a media aggregator. I left like the safe confines of traditional media. I don't know if I would have done that had I not been doing obstacle racing. So your line of sight into what your possibilities are opens up so dramatically when you invest in kind of going down this road of trying to master something new and hardish, right? Suddenly it's like you thought it was this, and then it's like the aperture opens and it could be this, and it could be this and this. And so I find, I don't know how much time I have, like none of us do, but I'm excited by what I'm, in a way I wasn't before, about what I do with that time.
Do you think that Spartan racing and the journey you went on to develop the expertise in Spartan racing, do you think that developed your sense of expansiveness and sense of can do and try new things? Or do you think that it actually was kind of a vehicle to go back and unlock some of what you had as a youth, and for whatever reason had been kind of closed up just because, we don't think about it that much when we're kids?
It's probably both.
Yeah.
I think it's probably both. And certainly the latter that you just said. I mean, these were things that I kind of just didn't pursue, and this was the key to unlocking it. But it was the key at the right time in my life. Again, I mean, I've had a couple of people say, "Well, don't you wish you'd started in your 20s or 30s? Like, think what you might have." I don't. I mean, I'm like, I needed this now, and I was ready for this now, and it's all upside, right? Like it's all upside, because I never thought in a million years would I be doing something like this. So I think yes, to the latter, but I also do think it's unlocked my line of sight. And I think this would be true for anybody if they're, again, on whatever pastime they're pursuing, where they do something they just didn't think they could do. Maybe they get so good on the piano or guitar that they go to the local coffee shop and they perform for people. And suddenly that opens up a whole line of sight into what they're thinking about. Think about what you're doing with Second 50. Like this is a whole community you are building based on the fact that you made some hard decisions about your own health. So I think it's both, to be honest.
I think it's both. I would agree with that. And I know we're getting a little short on time. I did want to make a comment and ask you to comment on it, because I have shown your book to a lot of people because I think it's such a great example for people to learn from. And sometimes the response is, well, look at her. She's thin and she's beautiful and she has these long arms and she's skinny. No wonder she can do all that stuff. I don't think I could do all that stuff. And I know from reading the book that none of that is really true. There were tremendous both emotional and physical challenges that you had to deal with in order to kind of make this change. But can you just speak to that a little bit? Because I'm always frustrated when people say, well, I can't do that because of this, that, or the other thing. And I think in particular for you, I mean, that's not a fair comment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm lucky enough that I am able, like, I can move, right? My limbs work. I don't have issues breathing. Like, I want to set a
Right.
baseline that I am at a baseline of health that I am
Yeah.
grateful for. And I don't know that everybody has that. So I certainly want to be careful of saying that I didn't have certain privileges and gifts because I did. Like, I consider the fact that I can get up on my own two legs, like, to be a gift, and that
Right.
that I've had health insurance to be a gift. And so those are definitely, I'm not going to pretend like those aren't advantages. That said, I mean, I couldn't even think of doing a single pull up or push up. I had never run more than a fun run 5K. I mean, again, like I think of all of the times I spent sitting on the bench, warming the bench in high school and grade school and just passing out water to my friends and never getting playing time and shooting free throws alone by myself in the back. Like these aren't like traumas in any way, but I certainly was never close to being able to do something
No.
like what you see on the cover of that book. And I did it when at a time when people say it is too late for you to be able to do
Yeah.
things. I think that is the big block. And that image on that cover is a signal of what we can do, not what we can't do, because I sure didn't think I could do that when I first Googled Spartan and found that. And it took years of work and years of running in the
Yeah.
rain and getting up. I was diagnosed with melanoma in the middle of it and had to have surgery to remove it. And I was, again, lucky because I had health care and health insurance, but that threw me for a loop of anxiety about like mortality that I had to combat, as you know, from having read the book. We all see people and we think that like they often have it easier or better than we do. And in some cases, they might in certain ways. Everybody's dealing with something, right? I don't know
Yeah.
everything that you're dealing with. I don't know everything your friends are dealing with for sure. But I know that the thing is, if we all can try, and we all probably have within us the ability to do more than we think we could, and to learn from each other, and really importantly, to support each other, to support your family, your spouses, your
Right.
friends when they do this, not to make fun of them, not to say, what are you doing that at your age? How could you?
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? Like let's like just that's what your community is going to be about. So I understand and I appreciate you sharing that with me about people who see that. I'd encourage those people to, they don't want to look at the cover, they can listen to the audiobook and then they'll hear the
That's
story.
right.
They'll know the truth.
They will definitely hear the truth. And it continues. I mean, there are no hacks, there are no shortcuts. I think what I was struck by in the book is that often on your way to a race at 5:45 in the morning, you are in the car thinking, boy, I wish I could reach over and have a sip of that coffee and just go home and go back to bed. I mean,
Yeah.
it continues to be a not a challenge, but a practice that you need to engage with.
It's a struggle. I still have starting line anxiety. I feel like I don't belong there. I am very nervous to make my way to the front of a starting line in a heat. Often, as you said, like I wake up and I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I, I just want to, I don't feel good. I want, all of the stuff, like it's there. And until I work through it and actually get out on the course, I just need to get going. But it's
Right.
hard. I mean, there are times when I've thought I could just turn around and go back and just like, and I could get back in the hotel bed, and that's what I want to do. I mean, right now I'm training to go to the World
Right.
Championship in Greece, in Sparta, Greece. And and I got like hamstring issues. I'm tired. Like I've got a lot going on at work, and but I really want to do this, because I think you got to do what you can, when you can, while you can. But doesn't mean it's going to be easy. But the alternative is what? The alternative is just
Yeah.
kind of feeling like I'm leaving something on the table or I'm
Yeah.
dialing it in. I'm happier to be in this frame and this mindset than where I was 8 years ago before I started. And I think that the opportunity is there for everybody, for sure.
And so far you have avoided major injury, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, for the most, like I've had tweaks here or there. I mentioned the issue with my foot. I've had some but I've never broken anything, small muscle, little tears, but little micro things that never anything that's kept me up, except when I was just dumb and didn't know things. Like I climbed a rope. What the first
Right.
time I actually was able to climb a rope after 6+ months of trying, I was so excited that I could do it. I kept doing it over and over again. And I happened to be just in my sock feet at that time or barefoot at the time. And I got a nasty rope burn
Mm.
that got completely infected. And my father was furious at me because he's a veterinarian, but he knows the medical field. He knows how dangerous and nasty ropes are. And I couldn't race because of that. Like, but that was my own doing, as
Yeah.
opposed
Yeah.
to something else.
Well, you are off. I believe it's early November, isn't it?
Yeah, good memory. Yeah, I leave. Yeah, the rate. It's 3 days of racing: a 5K, then a 10K, and a 21K. And honestly, I don't know how it's going to go. I mean, I haven't raced that distance in a long time, that many back-to-back races, because I've been working on the book and I've had my other
right.
job. I've had other things that have been going on. So this is a little bit of a gamble for me. And like you said about like, I probably will not come home with a medal from that, right? In
Yeah.
a championship. And you know what? I still want to go because how cool is that? It's
Very
just
cool.
great to go do it.
Now, we can't end without giving a shout out to Lisa, your spouse,
Yes.
because my spouse, Lori, has been extremely long suffering in my very limited compared to yours kind of trip back to fitness and health. And it can be a challenge for others in the household to have somebody this focused on health and fitness. So,
We're focused on anything, right? I think
yeah,
the natural inclination is, especially if you've been together for a while and then one person starts doing something, gets really into it, and the other person's not, it's like, well, what does that mean for me?
right,
And is there something missing with our relationship that means you're doing this? Are we going to be like, do we feel apart because of
right,
this? That's really important
right.
to like keep talking about it and also, to be helpful and supportive of whatever journey that person wants to go
That's
on
right.
and be just as open to it. And you're going to both have to sacrifice and not get to do everything you want. And I'm sure you found that with Lori, and we've had to navigate that in our own relationship. But I mean, look, that's just marriage and life, right? That's
Right,
just that's
right,
that's how you stay together in general.
right. No, that's very true. Well, the book's beautifully written. As I said, it really is a great read, and I really enjoyed the audio because I think you bring it to life when you read it. The book is also great, and the book does have a listing of the many authors, books, reference sources that you had consulted during the writing of it. So um, I think this is very helpful for our community. I really appreciate speaking with you and you're taking the time and wish you good luck. I will post a update for the Second 50 community on how things go over the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a couple things before we go. I mean, one, for anybody who has listened to this and their interest is piqued about Spartan racing or obstacle course racing, anyone who buys a copy of the book, you can go to my website, gwendolynbounds.com, and you can get a code for a free race. And races are
Oh,
not
I didn't
cheap.
realize that.
So,
Yeah.
so that is, you want to give it a shot or you want to give the code to somebody else to try it for the first time, like this is the opportunity to do it.
Okay.
So that's there. And I'll also say to you, because you're based in DC, that next year I'm going to be probably coming through the country and getting together with people to do something like this for the first time and pulling together teams in different venues, just so people can go through it together. They can do what they can support each other, help each other with obstacles, just make it something fun to experience. So I'll be in touch with you
That
and
would be
maybe
great.
I'll be coming to DC probably most likely. And so we can pull together some folks from your community to race with us.
That would be very fun indeed. And I will put a link to the book and everything on the website. So thank you very much. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
What a great conversation. Good questions. I
thank
appreciate it.
you.